Hey, it's the Porter Sports Seattle podcast. This is Casey McLean, and I'm at home after I have been not on the road every weekend, but I've been just nonstop comedy every weekend since I was figuring it out. It was like mid February. This is like the most maybe successful, probably not the most financially successful, but the most busy stretch and like kind of goal achieving stretch of I'm like pulling shit out of my pocket while I'm doing this. Um, the goal, like just the craziest stretch of comedy. I got to work with people I've always wanted to work with. I was the first, just last night, this weekend, I was the first local feature at the Emerald City Comedy Club in Seattle, Washington, which, by the way, go check that out. If you live near Seattle, you got to check out that club. It's so cool. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to level with you folks. Seattle comedy audiences, local Seattle comedy audiences at like neighborhood shows, which there's a bunch of venues out there that really cater to the specific neighborhood they're in. For me, those shows are some of the worst shows I do all year. That's the truth. Like I go up and I feel like I'm not what they want. I'm not what the crowd wants at that venue. And that was not true this weekend. And I think part of the deal is this club is opened by there's a handful of people involved in the ownership, and it's a big A club in Seattle, which they haven't had since the Parlor Live, which was not a very successful club, but it's a club that existed in Seattle. And it was I never actually performed at the Seattle one. I performed at the Bellevue one, but both of them eventually closed. And yeah, this is like going to draw people from outside of Seattle proper. So, not that Seattle necessarily needs more to do. Like Seattle's got a lot going on. Um, I'm just realizing I've got this new mic arm, and it's like slowly dropping every goddamn 4 seconds. We might be pausing for a second, folks, because this is going to annoy the shit out of me. Um, Anyways, very fun weekend. I'm exhausted, which has been the theme of this podcast for the last couple weeks. You don't care, you shouldn't care, but it's been the reality is that I've been tired, and some of these podcasts probably haven't been that great. I've also been like really focused on the draft, and some people like that, some people don't. I found the Allen head I need, by the way, to tighten this. It was sitting on my desk. But we're done with the draft theoretically. We're not going to talk about the draft, like the 2026 draft, NFL draft at all. But I mean, it is interesting, like mini camps starting, and we're hearing reports about the guys that are doing great and the guys that are making an impact, the guys that are making a great impression. Jalen Milroe. I mean, if you don't feel good about Jalen Milroe at this point, I don't know what to do for you, because the dude, he's academic Heisman, working with Jesse Palmer, doing everything he can, making marked improvements between the combine and his pro day and private workouts on his throwing mechanics. A guy who has a reputation for being like an extremely hard worker, and the Seahawks fan base is going to be clamoring for Jalen Milroe, and he's doing press conferences, and he comes off great in these press conferences. He is every bit. At least I get to enjoy it this time, because when the Seahawks drafted Russell Wilson, I was not on board with Russell Wilson as like a legit future starter in the NFL. I thought he was too short. I wasn't the only one. A lot of people thought he was too short. That's why he got drafted in the third round. I remember hearing of him that if he was 6'2", he would have been the number one overall pick. You didn't hear those same things about Jalen Milroe. Russell Wilson was an accomplished passer, a guy who it was the only thing they thought could hold him back was his height. And he was mobile, but not as mobile as Jalen Milroe is. I've never seen the fan base this hyped about a young quarterback since Russell Wilson, or even before Russell Wilson. And that's me, by the way. I mean, I'll acknowledge I've been a Seahawks fan long enough that I guess Matt Hasselbeck was a young quarterback when they acquired him, but not really. Charlie Whitehurst was like, reaching the end of his rookie deal. But I remember Rick Meyer. I remember the hype around Rick Meyer, and I remember the absolute abject failure that Rick Meyer was. It feels like the fan base is rightly becoming a fan of Jalen Milroe, and it's kind of interesting. The Seahawks are going to show Jalen Milroe or they're gonna hook him up to the. This makes it sound like the Matrix. He's going to get an opportunity to use the VR stuff that Jaden Daniels used last year, which is, if you don't know about it, it's like so it's VR. He's watching the game in VR, making reads. But what they were able to do for Jaden Daniels that I thought was interesting is to set it to like 1.25 speed. So when he gets into the game, this is like swinging with two bats. And that if you've ever played baseball, you swing with two bats and the bat feels lighter, feel like you can swing it harder. It's kind of like that, where it's like when he comes into the game and you ramp up the intensity because he's got the pressure of playing in a real game, but then you bring down the speed, they might level out, and this thing starts to become like a useful tool. And not only that, but you can't make real life go at 1.25 speed. Like that's pretty interesting. It doesn't seem like everybody in the world is using it, which is surprising to me. And I wonder if it's because, Jalen Milroe, academic Heisman. I don't know how rare that is, but like Jalen Milroe's a very smart guy. And maybe the VR stuff requires like a level of mental processing speed that not every quarterback even has. And I think quarterbacks on average might be the smartest position in all of sports. And that's the thing that's nuts when people they'll shit on quarterbacks. It's like these dudes, you have to be so good to make it to the NFL. You have to be so good to be a good pro quarterback. And I think most of these guys have to be like well above average intelligence. They have to be well above average at like the ancillary skills, like the ability to process quickly, all that stuff. And they also have to be diligent and politician-like. And is there any ADHD among quarterbacks? Are all these quarterbacks diagnosed with ADHD and taking Adderall all the time? I don't know. My guess, the level of concentration among quarterbacks is significantly higher than average. I'm excited to see what Milroe can do. And this is like a broken record, but apparently Colin Cowherd reported that the reports he's hearing are the Seahawks are going to want to use Jalen Milroe like 6 to 7 plays a game, which to me is like that's the perfect amount. In fact, I'm going to pull up as we sit here, I'm going to pull up the Lamar Jackson game log from his rookie season. I'm glad I'm not sharing my screen because I just had a message come across. I was like, whoo. So Jackson actually took over the starting job in his rookie year, which we've talked about in previous weeks. But let's talk about 2018. These are his first 9 games. He played in all 16 games that year. Back then, obviously, 16-game season. Game 1, he throws 4 times, 1 for 4, takes a sack, runs the ball 7 times for 39 yards. So on the field for what seems like maybe 12, 13 touches. I don't know how many downs. I don't have a snap count on here. We could probably get that, but that's not going to be super. Oh, wait, is that the snap count right there? Oh, 30 snaps. So 30 snaps. He throws the ball on not that many touches. Sorry. He throws the ball. No, it is 12 touches. 7 rushing attempts, 4 pass attempts, 1 sack out of 30 snaps on the field. Which was 37.5% of his team snaps. The weeks that followed were not as intense snap count wise. He had 6 snaps the following week, 2 of which were rushing attempts. The next week he had 2 snaps, 1 passing target, which gets to the discussion about whether or not Jalen Milroe is going to be Taysom Hill or if he's going to be season 1 Lamar Jackson. I hope there is not a single receiving target for Jalen Milroe in his career, because the risk of injury is so high, especially something you don't do a ton. I don't really want to see him spending time. Has Lamar Jackson's success not given us enough evidence that you can take a quarterback with this skill set and be successful? Like, if you remember Lamar Jackson, one, refused to run the 40-yard dash, brave, not for the reasons, by the way, that players do now, where they think they're going to be too slow. Lamar Jackson didn't run the 40-yard dash because he didn't want to be pigeonholed as a receiver. There were a bunch of teams in the NFL that wanted to make him a receiver. Lamar Jackson didn't want that, so he refused to run the 40-yard dash. That is enough evidence. We got to stop trying to get these guys to catch passes. If this guy's your quarterback in the future, you don't want him taking concussions. And you don't want to be taking reps away from him in practice, in my opinion. Even if it's reps watching the starting quarterback play, like I just don't. The juice is not worth the squeeze. Fill out the receiver room if you need that option. Not worth it to me. Lamar Jackson, the next game has 9 snaps, 4 carries, 17 yards. So did not 3 straight games with no pass attempts. The previous game where he had only 2 snaps, 0 rush attempts. The game before that, 2 rush attempts for 6 yards. The next game, 5 snaps, 3 rushes, 10 yards, 1 pass attempt that went for an incompletion. The next game, 2 snaps, 1 carry for 22 yards, which is like the first time it really feels like he made like a big impact on a game with a single play. But I actually don't know what his long carry was. Can we get that quickly? The other thing, by the way, in this first game they played against Buffalo, they won 47-3. So he might have actually taken over as the quarterback, and they just didn't throw the ball a ton because they were winning by so much. Ooh. This is a game, by the way, that was, I believe, started by Nathan Peterman in Buffalo. It might have been started by Josh Allen. Either way, Allen goes 6 for 15. Peterman goes 5 for 18. A combined 98 yards passing and 2 interceptions, no touchdowns. Can I get a long carry from... Why don't you give me a long carry for Lamar Jackson in that game? That's strange. Anyway, Lamar's next game, where were we at? 3 for the 1 for 22. Next game, 5 snaps, 3 carries, 1 pass attempt for 5 yards. So it's starting to become a higher percentage of his snaps. He's getting the ball in his hand in some form, which is kind of what I'd like to see with Milroe. I don't necessarily. I mean, there's probably an interesting setup having him and Darnold on the field at the same time. That would be very confusing. You could have Darnold go out wide. You could even have Milroe go out wide. I just don't want the guy getting actual targets. But I think that the most common scenario is Sam Darnold's going to come out for a play, and Jalen Milroe is going to come in and run a special play that's been designed for him. If there's 6 or 7 of those a game, I think that's great. The next game, 14 snaps. Lamar Jackson, we're in week 8 at this point. 4 out of 5 passing, 46 yards and a touchdown. 3 rushes for 26 yards. So that's 14 snaps. If you could get 2 out of 3 for 20 yards and a couple runs for 8 yards a carry, you're stoked on that for Jalen Milroe. The next game, the last game where he is not the starter, is 13 snaps, 1 out of 1 passing for 12 yards, 5 carries, 10 yards, 1 target passing. So I don't think he was exactly lighting the world on fire, but I mean, he wasn't. His prowess as a runner becomes a lot more obvious in games where he has a lot more snaps. So his first start, week 11 of his rookie year, 10th game of the year for the Baltimore Ravens, 13-19, 150 yards passing, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception, 26 carries, 119 yards rushing. So he starts to really make an impact. The next game, 14-25, 178 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, 11 carries, 71 yards, and a touchdown, 6.5 yards a carry. The next game, we can just you can go down this list. You can go look at this. The point is, he takes over and probably changes the Baltimore Ravens offense considerably. And that's why I'm happy with the way the Seahawks have handled their receiver room this offseason. I think trading DK Metcalf, regardless of what you thought about DK Metcalf as a player, and I liked him quite a bit, it was the only option. It was have him continue to play here unhappy, which we found out, to his credit, he was unhappy for multiple years and didn't make a big stink about it publicly. But you have this opportunity. He's probably going to hold out next year, maybe even this year if he doesn't get a new deal. Get him out of town. Or no, he was going into the final year of his contract, so I guess it would have been a question of whether or not you were going to franchise him. But it was going to be a potentially tumultuous offseason with DK Metcalf. I think they made the right move. Moving on from Tyler Lockett, also the right move. But you're not going to have as many 4 and 5 receiver sets. You're not going to have as many empty sets. Like having 2 quality receivers on the field is probably going to be a lot more common than it has been in previous years. And especially, by the way, if Milroe takes over as the quarterback, there's a rookie quarterback of any throwing ability is going to suppress receiver targets. Like the teams typically run the ball more often, and a guy with Milroe's pedigree and his weaknesses, I think, is going to come in and have a very similar. So in Lamar Jackson's starts, he never threw the ball more than 25 times in a game in his rookie season. I want to see what Russell Wilson. I'm going to pull up Russell Wilson and see, because Russell Wilson, very different quarterback from Lamar Jackson, but also, came to a team that had a very good running game, and the team ran the ball a lot early in his career. Let's see. Let's get there. 2012. And he obviously starts from the beginning. His first game of his career, he threw the ball 34 times. That's actually kind of crazy. He threw the ball 34 times in his first game. 35 in week 8, his 8th game. And 37 in week 12, which was his 12th game, but it was also an overtime game. So I think that's like exactly what the difference is between Russell Wilson and Lamar Jackson in their rookie years. Is Russell Wilson was a very good and accomplished college passer, and Lamar Jackson was a guy you had to pattern an offense around. I hope the Seahawks do something similar with Jalen Milroe, and that those 6 or 7 plays a game, they can pull some explosives out of the guy. Last week I talked about, this is going to be a short episode, by the way. I got like a million house projects that I'm behind on, so it's probably going to be 3 topics and then we go. Last week I talked about Brian Wu and how I don't think that Brian Wu is an ace. And then Brian Wu went out, threw 6 1/3 innings, faced only 20 batters, 1 more than the minimum, gave up 1 hit, struck out 8, walked 0. Game score, version 2 game score of 83. Very, very strong performance. An ace-like performance. A performance that, does a lot to invalidate what I said, frankly. And by the way, I want to make this, I hope I'm wrong. I hope Brian Wu puts up ace numbers for the rest of his career. That would be great. And stays healthy. That'd be great. I'm eating crow on this one game quite a bit, but these aren't dominant strikeout numbers, right? 8 strikeouts in 6 1/3 innings is very good, but that's not proof that I was wrong. Am I just justifying this to nobody? Nobody argued with me, by the way. I posted like a reel of it, and nobody argued a little bit. So maybe everyone's on my side. Somebody should have pointed this out to me. I shouldn't have had to watch this happen with nobody taunting me, but Brian Wu had an ace-like outing. What do you think about, give me your comments on Brian Wu and what you think Brian Wu's going to, am I wrong? Is Brian Wu an ace? If you've listened to this podcast, you know that I don't think this is a historically good rotation. You know that I don't think it's 5 aces on a staff. Also, by the way, Logan Gilbert, I don't know if we talked about it last week. Logan Gilbert goes out with forearm tightness. Luke Raley with an oblique. These are like the two, I mean, oblique is not as bad as what forearm tightness could be, right? But it sounds like Rayleigh's going to have miss an extended amount of time. Logan Gilbert, you got to be just like everybody's holding their breath to find out how bad it is. How bad is it? Is this forearm tightness or is this forearm tightness? If you're just listening to the podcast, I did scare quotes. Is that what they're called? Scare quotes? Scare quotes or air quotes? Nope, I don't know. I don't know what scare quotes are. Never mind. I meant air quotes, not scare quotes. I don't know why I've heard scare quotes and gained the confidence to say it like I knew what it actually meant. We can talk about those. We can talk about that another time. I will use scare quotes at some point now that I know what they mean. Also, so the Mariners are, I would say, have not had good injury luck. I don't think that's a hard sell. Losing Victor Robles very early for potentially the whole season. Losing Ryan Bliss really early, which is, I like Ryan Bliss a lot, but I don't think it changes the expectations of the Mariners that much to lose Ryan Bliss. Robles was certainly a much worse injury. You still haven't seen George Kirby, though he's supposed to make a rehab start in Tacoma and maybe comes back up to Seattle very soon. You're short of Logan Gilbert. Luis Castillo is losing velocity, though he had a good outing the other day. It's the Mariners are having bad luck in a year where they might afford to be able to have bad luck. Where the AL West is kind of mediocre, where the entire American League seems kind of mediocre. And they're also having great years. I mean, Cal Raleigh is, as I record this, Cal Raleigh is leading Major League Baseball in home runs. A catcher is leading Major League Baseball in home runs. Part of that is, by the way, Cal Raleigh has played 33 games, which how many games have the Mariners played? I know like league leader in games has played in 36 games, so he can't have sat out very many games. I'm pulling up the Mariners playoff odds to see this, by the way. So the Mariners have played 33 games. Jesus Christ, Mariners. 20-13. This is not great. This is gonna potentially. I said it over the years that the Mariners were treating Cal Raleigh like a guy that they didn't intend to extend. Like they were going to squeeze every drop of value out of they could before they let him walk with just an absolutely battered body. And I'm glad they re-signed him, but they got to start spelling him some because you just can't have a catcher playing. What did he play last year? 153 games. You cannot have your catcher play 153, 145. He's played every game this year. You just cannot expect him to do that for very long. Let's pull up Joe Mauer. Very good catcher. Played 158 games in 2015. Never crossed the 150 mark in another season. Played 140 in 2006. And then 109. Yeah, it's just... Let's look up... the other one is... why can't I think of his name? Buster Posey. No, I got Bus Gordon for some reason. Buster Posey only crossed 150 once in 2015, but in 2015, I thought the Giants kind of brilliantly, 2015, he played 42 games of first base. And I've been an advocate for Cal Raleigh to get some time and I'm going to at least put my money where my mouth is because Cal has played 6 games at DH, 8 games at DH. Okay. I'll give him that. Never mind. I take it back a little bit. I'm getting proven wrong left and right in real time here. There was a lot of chatter in the offseason about trading J.P. Crawford or moving on from J.P. Crawford. Do any of you remember that? Were any of you guilty of that? Were any of you pieces of shit guilty of talking shit about sweet J.P. Crawford. I've been on record many times. I like J.P. Crawford as a draft prospect. I was really thrilled when the Mariners traded for him. The fact that he's having a bounce back season is very nice. And I also, the other thing that I'm happy about with regard to J.P. Crawford is that the Mariners have quickly adapted. Early in the season, they had him at 8th and 9th, and some of this is certainly out of necessity because Victor Robles is out and Luke Raley's out, and they have to put some better bats at the top of the lineup. But JP is walking 15+% of the time, and his strikeouts are at 18.8% of the time. This is like a renaissance year for JP Crawford. This would be his lowest strikeout rate since 2022 if he holds this number, and the highest walk rate of his career. 146 WRC plus. His big season in 2023, 136 WRC plus. Right now, JP Crawford's hitting better than he ever has. Huge career renaissance at the age of 30. That's not necessarily something that's sustainable. But he's not doing it with he's got good batted ball luck, 346 batting average on balls in play. But it's not bullshit. These aren't empty stats for JP. He did hit for a little more power on average. He had a 172 isolated power in 2023. But even if he doesn't hit for power, and even if the on base percentage drops to 360, that's a very good leadoff hitter out of the shortstop spot. I don't know if this is I'm not a journalist. We agree on this. I'm gonna say one last thing about the Mariners before we move on to the final topic of the day, which is one that I had no idea I was going to be talking about. I don't know if there was speculation about it before, but it was a little jarring to find out. First off, Jorge Polanco is 31 years old. Is that your perception of how old Jorge Polanco is? Because I would have guessed, based on his injuries and the way people have perceived him, and we talked about him on this podcast when the Mariners signed him, and I'm sure we talked about his age, but you'd think this guy was 36 years old. You think this was Donovan Solano, a 37-year-old first baseman that's 5'3". Jorge Polanco's hitting the shit out of the ball. He's 31. There's potentially gas left in that tank. J.P. Crawford's 30. Jorge Polanco is 31 years old. I mean, certainly Polanco's not going to carry a 405 isolated power the whole season, but do you think that Jorge Polanco is getting the piss cup in his in his locker a little more often right now? I'm not you got a guy that's coming off of an injury, and it's always stuck in my mind when Mike Morse is the only guy who got busted for steroids in my memory and truly owned it. I mean, you'll recall Manny Ramirez got caught taking women's fertility medication, which I'm not a scientist, but I believe it's a masking agent for steroids, and I believe the way that it masks it is it balances out your hormones temporarily for the test. So you take this test and your testosterone levels are inside of the acceptable range. And Manny Ramirez wanted us to believe that he was dumb enough to be taking women's fertility medication because him and his wife were trying to have a baby. As though somehow they were one pill for you, one pill for me, throwing them up. My buddy Andrew Rivers has a joke about that, but they're just tossing, they're when you throw popcorn at each other, trying to catch it with your mouth, him and his wife. Come on. Mike Morse had I believe a torn quadricep muscle, which I've done that before, and it still crops up on me where it'll cramp in the spot that it tore, and I'm rubbing it right now, not feverishly masturbating under my desk. If you hear it or see me looking like I've pulled up a picture of Mike Morse and I'm going to town, Mike Morse just said, yeah, I had an injury. I was not going to be able to play baseball anymore if I didn't recover from the injury, and it was basically choosing between not having a baseball career or breaking the rules of baseball. So he chose to break the rules of baseball. which was the first time I was like, oh yeah, I would have done the same thing. There's no doubt that I would have done the same thing. If given that opportunity, if given those two choices, yes, absolutely. I would have taken steroids. Now, am I dancing around enough the idea that Jorge Polanco is having a suspicious power surge as he enters his 30s? Has he become a father recently? Is dad's strength a part of this? I can't remember if Jorge Polanco has become a father or not recently, but all I'm saying, the Mariners have been hot on Jorge Polanco for a long time. They believed him they believed in him as a hitter. They believed in him enough to trade for him. Oh, also, by the way, Jorge Polanco's already been suspended for steroids earlier in his career. I forgot that. Oh God, I don't want to be the reason why he gets. I don't want to be the reason why he gets in trouble. But I mean, nobody's listening to this podcast. At least very few live. Should I do this at a different time, by the way? Can you comment if this is on YouTube and you're watching it when it's, what time do you want me to do it? Because I've got my life has regained a little bit of sanity to the point that I could maybe make some changes to when I do something like this podcast. And I'd love to know your opinion. All right. What was I pulling up about Polanco? Oh yeah, does he have a kid? Yeah, 3 children, Jorge Jr., Justin, and Joey. That's an interesting. I have a friend that's got that situation. Justin, for a Dominican, child of a Dominican-born player, is an interesting name. Justin Polanco. Look out for Justin Polanco. Shout out to Justin Polanco. All right, last topic of the day. Bret Boone got hired as the Texas Rangers hitting coach. And I don't have any thoughts on Bret Boone as a coach because I don't know that Bret Boone has done much coaching. I'm pulling up Bret Boone's career stats because some of those numbers he had video game numbers in some of those Mariner years. Let's see. So, 2001, the year the Mariners won 116 games. Bret Boone takes third in the MVP voting. 37 doubles, 3 triples, 37 home runs, 141 RBI. That leads the league, hits 331, 372, 578 for a 950 OPS. Very good season from Bret Boone. And then, obviously, the Jose Canseco book comes out, and everyone probably accurately suspects that Bret Boone did steroids. What did Boone play? Boone never played for Texas, which is kind of surprising because he moved all around. Boone's had an interesting post-baseball career. I interviewed Kevin Martinez, the Mariners VP of marketing at the time, and now president of baseball operations. No, what is his title? Is it president of baseball operations? I mean, he got a big promotion. I think it's president of baseball operations. Is that right? Hold on, Kevin Martinez. This is how tired I am. Oh, president. Sorry. Promoted to president of business operations. He should be president of baseball operations. Give him the whole thing. I was in there to talk to him. Just a very generous guy that has let me come in and interview him for a couple of stupid podcasts. Been to a comedy show. Man of the people. Nobody loves Kevin Martinez more than me. And I went into the stadium, which was really cool. Second time I'd gotten to do it. Go into the stadium, go into Kevin Martinez's office with a couple microphones and a recorder. And in fact, that day they were doing they do an event. It might be Top Golf. It might have been to get Top Golf here, but you were hitting golf balls out of suites out onto the field. And they were like doing a test run of it that day. I got to he's like, check this out. And we went and saw the these guys hitting golf balls out onto the baseball field, which is pretty cool. And then I go, hey, did you see Bret Boone on Twitter today? And Bret Boone was on like at the time, to be a Seattle icon and be like super outwardly pro Donald Trump was incredibly rare. And politics aside, like, it's risky if you are a celebrity to take like a huge political stance, and especially baseball, which is, I think, trends conservative. I mean, the players, I think, are pretty conservative. A lot of the fans are pretty conservative. And he's like, I just remember Kevin Martinez going like, oh no. And then Boone, I don't think, has commented a ton on politics since then. I've talked to David Aardsma on this podcast, and Aardsma will comment on politics a little bit, or on, not necessarily on politics per se, but like politically charged topics and politics, but not exclusively politics. My point is, very risky, and I'm just happy that we live in a time, or maybe he's just going to a place. I like the idea of seeing Bret Boone become a coach. I may not agree with him on politics. I am happy to see that guy get a chance despite going a little nuts. Like, by the way, both people on both sides went a little nuts in 2016. I also think it's weird when steroid users get coaching jobs. It's a little bit like when Michael Jordan, when people would talk about, well, shouldn't Michael Jordan be a great coach? And the answer is no, because what he's going to coach people to like hang in the air for longer than anyone seems to be able to possibly do it, jump higher than everyone, run faster than everyone, work harder than everyone. Some of that stuff is just innate. And then some of it, in the case of Michael Jordan, did come from hard work. Some of it, in the case of Bret Boone or some of these other guys, came from a little bit of performance-enhancing substances. And you certainly hope he's not teaching these guys that. What I do remember about Bret Boone is he did that. Remember that 2-strike stance he would do in 2001? Every time he'd get 2 strikes, he'd choke up on the bat and he'd crouch further down. He'd open up his stance and he would hit for power even from that position. And I think that's like, maybe he is more of a technician than we give him credit for. Hopefully he goes to the Rangers and fails miserably and then brings those but I mean, like, very recently he was praising the Mariners on social media, and it's a little jarring to go from that to very quickly he's a coach on the Texas Rangers staff. All right, I got to go, folks. My wife's calling. Thank you for listening, the folks that did, and I will talk to you next week probably.